Hello, my name is Greg George. This video is to go over Control X and its functionality to inspect multiple parts. Um, so there are different levels of automation that can be used inside of Control X. So I'll just demonstrate a few of those today to show the different levels of automation that you can use. So you can see right now I have a part loaded up on screen that's already an inspection that's created on a CAD model with no measured data, no inspection scan data. So you can create this inspection with a CAD model without having any measurements yet, is essentially what we're doing here. And once you have this file and you save it and create it, this file is essentially an empty container ready for you to put scan data in. So for the first type of automation, just like a manual method, the file is created, and let's just say I go scan this part, and then I have a file. So if I have a file of that part, I can literally just drag in. I'm dragging in from my other monitor a piece of scan data. Now, once I drag in that scan data, the only thing I need to do is just hit rebuild, and it will create all the same measurements that we made on the CAD model on both of them, and then populate the results. So if you want to, from here, I can hide the scan data, and you can see there's my deviation from the CAD model. If I want to just create a report, I can do that right now. I can hit create report and select what I want and hit generate, and it will write it to a certain location. So you can see how that's the first level of automation, being able to just open a file, drag something in, and hit apply. Some people want to be able to do that. Another one is, let's say that I have somebody hands me a second part. So what I can do here is I can import that second part inside of this result here, the measurement results. Or, and then when I import that, I hit rebuild, and it will create the measurements on a second scan, right? Or if I want to see them both in the same file, I can duplicate the result and then do exactly what I described, where I import another data set. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit delete here because I'm going to drag and drop. So in this instance, I just dragged scan B into this file, and you see it's a different scan of a different part, and now it'll update. So now you'll see I still have my result number 1 up top here, and with the measurements, and then result 2, and then I can even come over to my tools, result navigator, and see these parts side by side. So you can see result number 2 and result number 1, and you can toggle what types of data that you want to see side by side here in the workspace manager. So if I wanted to change to just showing linear dimensions side by side, or just the color plot side by side, and I can use that to verify differences in the data. So you can see how this is very useful. So that part isn't automation necessarily, but that is a side effect of, being able to drag multiple parts inside of one document and then run inspection reports on that. So speaking of inspection reports on that, if I wanted to give a report that had both of the results, this one and this one in it, when I go to the generate report tool, I can grab measurements from result 2, result 1, and throw them in. So like if I wanted to make a double report that had both, I can just grab everything and throw it over. Oops. And then you can reorder things. So essentially what I would be doing is making a report that has both of these results in one, right? So that's another method. So now, let me just reopen this file not save anything. Reopen my empty file. I will say most people, when they talk about automation, usually refer to this one. So the idea is I load up my empty file, and somebody has given me 50 scans of this part, and I want to run uh, this inspection on those 50. Now, this one tends to be the most used, what I see, because it's pretty easy to set up, and all I have to do is kick it off one time, and then it'll run on all of them, and that's called a batch process. So if I come over to batch process, what I can do is, using whatever document I have open, I can load up the scans that I want to use. So in this instance, I'll just come over to my sample files. And you'll see I have 6 independent scans. I'm going to load up all 6 of those. I'm going to tell it to use result number 1, save the model, export a report as a PDF in the same folder. And I'll just use the measured file data name. So whatever it is, it's just going to use that file name. Now, one thing that is nice about this is, you see how it says print report, export report? Print report will actually trigger off to print a physical copy on whatever printer you have attached as the default. So that's interesting as well. So now once I plug in my scan data, change my settings, I hit OK, and you will see that it will go through each one of these and export the report. So now it has finished all of the parts. Just drag this over here. Here is the output folder that we selected. And now we have the original scan. I said to save the actual project file and the report here. So if I just open up one of these reports, you'll see here is the inspection report. So there isn't much in there. I just made it like a basic file for that. So now the third type of automation is what we call automation server. So I'm going to change my screen around here, and you'll see everything on my screen, and I'll show the automation server setup. All right, so now I have my full screen showing here, which is going to be really small. I understand that, but I can explain how everything is set up. The way you set up an automation server is you navigate in Windows into the install directory here. So program files, 3D systems, Geomagic Control X. In that folder, you have 2 files, a automation client and automation server, which I have open right here on screen. So once you open these up, there are a few prerequisites that you need. What I typically do is I will also make a folder structure down here that has all the folders that I need to go in and out of this software, and you'll see what I mean here in a second. So I actually will create a folder that has these folders in it: communication, export, actually not export, that was for a different project, communication, monitor, output, and template, and I'll even make a rule folder instead of having all these rules sitting out in the open most of the time. This is an old one that I grabbed here. So the reason why we have those is when you open up the server and you go into the options, these are the things that you need to fill out. So I go single source if you have a single file that you need to inspect, which is typically what people need to do, is they take a single scan in and inspect it to the CAD model. What you do is point now to those folders. So you point to the monitoring folder, which is what I would call the watch folder, and I'll explain that here in a second. You point to the template folder, which is going to have the Control X inspection file that we created earlier. Identification rule is going to be a list of rules in a CSV file that the software is going to follow, and a communication folder, which is just so it can write stuff back and forth between itself. And then you can tell it to save the model, print report, just like before, PDF, where you want the output files to go. And then you can even change the name, and then you can even have different types of triggers, which I'll get into that in a later video. But for this, we just talk about the initial setup and how to inspect multiple files. So the monitoring folder, I'll explain what that is. When a scan is created and then is copied to this folder, as soon as that scan hits that folder, the software will grab it, look at its name, follow the rules that are identified in here, grab the proper template file, and then inspect it. So the template file, again, is the file that has our Control X. So if I just navigate to my template file, you can see you can have multiple inspections in here. And I have Control X automation. So that part that we did earlier, I have that in here, just an empty file. And then the rule kind of brings this all together. So if I say edit identification rule, we're going to edit that CSV inside of Control X. And this is kind of where it all comes together. You can establish rules here. So you can build a library of parts. So if I wanted like 13 different part numbers, what you can do is say any file with part number, XYZ123 dot star, measure with this file here, right? And then within that file, you can tell it what to do. Use result number 1, 2, even run scripts using our scan processes. And then this is whether it's going to report or not. So what we have here is I just made a very simple rule. Any STL that hits that folder, inspect it against this file here using result number 1. So in order to go ahead and test this out, I'm just going to cancel out and let everything go. So now, once I'm ready to start the server, I can hit Start Server, connect the client, and then we are ready to copy the file into the monitoring folder. So if I just go copy, paste, and you'll see Control X automatically kicks off and opens. It opens the part here, and then it's going to create an inspection. And I'm going to toggle over to the output folder here, and you'll see that it just spit out the inspection. So the way this works is it'll just sit here and monitor. So if I come over and I hit copy B, now it'll grab scan B, and you'll see it starts processing. So this will just sit, and you can even run this on a server where it just sits there and it will run these predefined parts. Now if I set part numbers and everything for my parts, it would intelligently grab the right inspection and spit out the proper report. It's almost like a library, right? And it will intelligently, based off the file name, select the proper inspection to go with it and then create it. So this is an overview of multi-part inspection with Control X. Again, there's manual, semi-automatic, and then fully automated inspection like this. So we talked about dragging and dropping a file in and updating. We talked about using multiple results to inspect multiple files. And then we talked about the batch processor, which will inspect a bunch of files all at once. Or you can set up a server, which will do it kind of on demand once the files are ready. So if you have any questions, feel to reach out to 3D Systems and we will help you out. Thanks a lot.